Good evening. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners. Welcome. We're happy to have you here with us tonight. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Police Chief Bill Carter.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Our invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches, Wendell Baptist Church, we're going to hear from Errol Fleming. Briggerman, not Errol Fleming. I know Errol Fleming. I'm sorry. Errol Briggerman.
Good evening.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Let me make a couple of announcements first, if I may.
Sir, absolutely.
Just FYI, Wendell Baptist Church, they started it this Sunday where we had our youth do both services, and so we're starting back. It's still very socially distanced the way we have the church laid out, but we'll be doing an 8:30 service going forward and 11 a.m. service going forward, and a couple other things we're doing, but those with the children, but they're doing it off-site. So our youth did an awesome job Sunday. We had one of our 15-year-olds brought the message, and secondly, I need to announce that my wife Beverly and I, this is our 50th wedding anniversary this Saturday, and unfortunately Beverly's having some issues with cancer now, so we need to hold her up in prayer as well. But beyond that point, let's pray and bless this time together, okay? Lord, we just thank you for this evening. We just thank you, Lord, for how you have watched over this city, how you have just held our hand and helped us through this time. We ask you, Lord, to watch over our churches, and that each one of them have been able to administer to their flocks, to their members, and help them through this time. We just know, Lord, that as long as we give it up to you, that everything will be taken care of fine. We just ask you, Lord, to watch over our councilmen tonight as they have to make decisions, which is for the betterment of our community. We just know, Lord, that it's all in your hands. We just pray for our commissioners, Lord, that and our city, Lord, especially during this COVID time, that you will help us through this, bring us back stronger, Lord. For all these things we ask in your blessed name. Amen.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I messed up your name. I had a call from a friend today whose father is named Errol Fleming, and I just guess I had them on my mind. Yes, I know. Someone I hadn't seen in a while. So I had it on my mind. I wrote it down wrong. So thank you.
Okay.
Please tell your wife we're thinking of her.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll get through it. Thank you now.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, do I have a motion to approve? Are there any adjustments to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Commissioner Lute's motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, so that passes unanimously. Public comment period. The public comment process is provided in advance of the meeting, and the public has the opportunity to submit written comments to the town clerk or participate via calling in the conference by emailing their name, address, and phone number to the clerk by this past Friday, September 25th at 5 p.m. That's how it works every time right now. The clerk normally would unmute anyone who'd requested to speak, but we have no one signed up for tonight. But if you wish to sign up for next time, it's the same process. The consent agenda, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Commissioner Lute's motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Commissioner Joyner? Aye. Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Aye.
And Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Item number 4 is our recognitions, reports, and presentations. The first we're going to hear is Item 4A, the 2020 pavement condition survey report prepared by Withers and Ravenel, and we're going to hear from Public Works Director Brian Bray. Good evening, Mr. Bray.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Town Board. I'm happy to bring before you tonight a report on the pavement condition survey, the PCS, by our engineer of record, Withers Ravenel. And we'll just move right along, and I will turn this over to Bill Cowan with Withers Ravenel.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Bill, you've been
Madam Mayor,
unmuted.
Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, thank you so much for allowing us to make this presentation tonight. I'm sorry we were not able to visit you virtually, but we will proceed with the oral presentation of the pavement condition survey and management plan. As Brian said, my name is Bill Cowan. I am a senior client officer with Withers Ravenel. Our team tonight, represented here by Joe Turner and Steve Lander, is pleased to present the findings and recommendations of your town's pavement condition survey and management plan recently completed by our firm. Joe Turner has a total of 15 years experience in the field of engineering, both in the public and private sector. Joe has worked with NCDOT as well as your neighboring town of Knightdale, where he served as town engineer. Joe served as the team leader in this project to collect the survey data highlighted in our report tonight. I'm also pleased to introduce to you tonight the newest member of our pavement management team, Steve Lander, who recently joined our firm as Director of Pavement Management. Steve has 27 total years of experience in the engineering field and 17 years in the pavement management industry. Steve is here tonight to answer any questions you may have about our recommendations and certainly the implementation of your program going forward. And with that introduction, I will turn the program over to Joe Turner for a brief slide presentation.
Joe, you've been unmuted.
All right, thanks. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I want to thank you all for having us out this evening. I guess I'm gonna. I think Mark is controlling the slides.
Yes, that's right now. It's on the firm professional slide.
Very good, very good. So I'll let you know when to advance and which one to advance to, Mark, just so we're on the same page. Because I can't see what y'all have up. I'm just reading from my presentation here at the house. So I want to thank everybody for allowing us to be here. We all know that pavement management is an important function of public works from both a safety and aesthetic standpoint. Officially allocating funds for street repairs and repaving contracts is a necessity, but can be difficult to accomplish due to the variables involved. The purpose of our presentation this evening is to briefly review our approach to the pavement survey, provide the results of the survey to the board, and to outline the pavement management plan moving forward. We use a bit of a hybrid approach here at Withers Ravenel, where we leverage GIS technologies and paper software to provide flexible solutions. When we complete a PCS, we don't just hand over a condition report. We want to help our clients get through to the next steps and implement the plan. So Mark, if you can move forward to the firm professional slide 2.
Done.
So as Bill mentioned, we've got Steve, the newest member of our group, and then myself. I assisted with the survey as well as putting the report together for the town of Wendell. In addition to, I want to give some credit, Brian Hill and Jacob Smith were our survey team. We had just a single team out to review the 32.5 miles of roads. Brian Hill led that effort. He was the driver and called out all the distresses And then Jacob Smith provided the GIS support and put those things, all the distresses into and captured them geospatially. Brian Hills, our construction manager, has 28 years of experience, and Jacob Smith is new to our staff, has 2 years of experience, graduated out of Virginia Tech, and is a staff professional too. All right, Mark, next slide, please. So the purpose of a pavement condition survey is to take an unbiased snapshot of the town's pavement infrastructure health. The pavement condition changes yearly, and some years can be worse than others. Winters are particularly taxing on asphalt roadways. It's important to monitor that change, and the Federal Highway Administration recommends conducting these surveys every 2 to 3 years. And the results of these surveys allow the town to prioritize the system needs and create capital improvement plans to improve the overall level of service. It also helps provide a historical record of pavement performance. As you complete these surveys from year to year, you can see how well the pavement is performing. And we want to point out here that the dirt roads that are within the town and maintained by the town were not included in this pavement condition survey, and thus the budget numbers covered later in this presentation, they don't reflect the dirt roads being programmed and built to town standards. So I wanted to let you all know that. All right, Mark, slide 4, please. So Withers, Ravenel, believe it or not, we surveyed every street within the town of Wendell. Our driver is the pavement expert, and they call out the distresses, their severity, and their quantity. And our passenger, who is equipped with the tablet loaded with the GPS, they verify these call outs from the driver and capture that location of the data. This work must be done vehicle traveling between 5 and 10 miles an hour. We use a measuring wheel to obtain street widths, and we carry a hard copy of the Powellville map with a list of streets in case there's discrepancies in the field and our GIS data. And because we're working at slow speed, we're hopping in and out of the vehicle, and we do have vehicle-mounted signs and strobe lights along with vests and our personal protective equipment. Next slide, Mark. All right. So we capture all of this data using the GIS software where we can geolocate each of the pavement distresses and we can associate that distress to the appropriate street segment that it's surveyed on. And each point on the map, so you can see briefly the snippet here in the slide, there's these points everywhere, and each point on that map represents a specific stress, and the data associated with these stress, like its severity, light, moderate, or severe, or how much of that distress there is. So you can click on each one of those points in the interactive map, and it shows you and tells you how much it is and all those attributes to that point. And let's move on to the results. Next slide, Mark. Slide 6. All right, thank you. So Withers Ravenel surveyed approximately 32.5 miles of streets for the town. The overall pavement condition index or score for Wendell's roadway network is a 74, which is satisfactory. They're in good condition. Of the total network of streets surveyed, 40% of those streets score well in the good category. And we want to note here that there was approximately 16% increase in the network mileage over the last 4 years, which obviously indicates there's growing going on. The town's growing, the roadway network is growing, and there's a lot of new pavement down. So it skews the results a little bit. And so of that total network, we've got 75% of the roadway network is above the critical PCI of 55, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And conversely, 25% of the network is in significant need of repairs and or rebuilding. So that's going to be important to, as we move forward with our pavement management plan, being able to not only fix those roads, repairing and rebuilding, but also we want to put in some preventative maintenance so that the roads will last longer. And then the town asked us to put together, as we went out and surveyed these roads, we were also able to tabulate all the sidewalks with, so there is a total of 16.2 miles of sidewalk in the town's network. Next slide, Mark. So this here, try not to hover too long on this graph here. So before we go to the budget scenarios, this graphic illustrates the life cycle of pavement. And as you move up, the scores increase. So you've got the good, that's where the pavement starts. So you start off with a new road, you start off in the good. And as you move along time, then the PCI drops. And so in pavement, there's a point circled in red here at which the pavement condition begins a quick descent and deteriorates rapidly, called the critical PCI. So that significant drop in condition accounts for just a small percentage of this pavement's life. But what happens is there's also ends up being a significant cost involved to repair or replace that asphalt, sometimes 5 to 10 times apply a preventative measure when the asphalt condition is in satisfactory or fair in the flat part of the curve there. So taking that into consideration as we move forward, Mark, can you provide the budget scenario slide, slide 8? So using our software, we were able to analyze several scenarios to assist the town with creating a 5-year pavement management plan. In these scenarios, we set an overall average PCI goal of the town. The software assists in calculating funding amounts to be able to maintain that average overall PCI for the 5-year period. So a 5-year pavement plan doesn't mean you will treat all roadways every 5 years, but that you are treating approximately 25% to 33% of your roadway network every 5 years, and then treating all the roads within that 15 to 20 year life expectancy. So of the scenarios that we looked at, the overall average PCI of 75, so basically we're maintaining, because we have that overall PCI of 74 currently, that allowed the town to have funding to achieve the repair or replacement of roads that were failed in the serious or very poor condition towards the end of its life. And then it also allowed the town to begin applying preventative measures to roads in the fair or satisfactory category to increase the pavement lifespan at a fraction of the cost to repair or replace. And so I'm going to kick it over to Steve, who will talk about next steps with the town in implementing this 5-year pavement management plan.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. Hey, we really appreciate being able to do this, and we definitely commend the town on their efforts and pavement management, and everything that we talked about in pavement management can also be applied to the other assets, which is the goal. And the goal here is to manage, in pavement's case, it's the pavement condition index, that PCI, at the highest level of service for the least cost. So that's what we attempted to do with this 5-year plan, and what that means is we're going to have, there's going to be resurfacing and preventative maintenance, and we like to call it the right mix of fixes. So everything that applies to pavements within that 5-year plan, the goal is to apply it to other assets. And the goals of the town to include stormwater infrastructure, the sidewalks, to find any gaps in the sidewalks for the safe rides to school, ADA transition plan, and then water, sewer, and other utilities. And so having only one piece of the puzzle, the asset management, it's okay, but it's much better when we have all of the assets to help us make better decisions. And the goal here is to ensure that the citizens of the town gets the best product from what we're doing. And so that's the goal here. And there are a lot of municipalities that just hover around the pavement and they don't get to the other assets, and I think that's the missing piece, and we're really looking forward to the town moving forward with it. So next slide, which is questions.
Are there any questions from the board for the gentleman?
I've got a couple.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, question around the PCI. What's the merit of having a PCI higher than 75? I see you listed 80, 85. It looks like besides about $300,000, what's the merit in trying to hold an 80 versus trying to hold an 85 versus trying to hold a 75?
Yeah, I think when you get, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yeah, so when you get into the range, you're exactly right. I mean, I think that for the most part, the differences are slight, but I think that if you can stay within the range is really what we're looking at here, to be above that critical PCI really is the goal. I think that in the end you can apply preventative measures to that range of pavements, but I think that if you look at it from a 70 versus an 80, there's not a lot of there's not a big gap there.
Okay.
Steve, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I think when it's, and there's a lot of folks that want to say, hey, we want to keep our network at an 80 or 75, and it kind of depends upon how much money that you're willing to spend to get where you want to be, and sometimes an 80 is out of the question. It's just too much money to spend. 75 is a good PCI score. I think when you start getting down into the low 70s and the high 60s, you start ending up with it's a real slippery slope where it just costs more money to get your network to the acceptable level of service. So it's really not kind of a canned location where you can say that's where you want to be. It's really kind of, it depends upon how much money you want to spend and what's the level of service. But 75 is definitely is a good place to shoot for.
Gentlemen, this is Mark. I've got the modeling critical PCI slide up, and if the town is currently at a 74 and we're only funding for a 70, looking at how it drops off when you get down to the critical PCI, to have that drop off after a 5-year period, the change isn't really happening at the good roads at the beginning. The change is happening the roads closer to the critical dropping off. And so there's the hypothetical of where do you fund, but then how is that applied to Wendell's roads? The new roads are still going to look fairly new in 5 years, but if we underfund for it to drop, the drop is happening in the median. Does that sound right, Joe?
Yes, sir. I think that is accurate.
Mm-hmm. And I think the key is that, we want to keep good roads good, but there's roads in all categories. And when they start jumping categories from one type of maintenance activity to another because you're underfunded, that's where you end up, having to spend more money than you could have had you spent money at the right time.
Also, to clarify for the board, this is Mark again. This doesn't mean that we put this exact amount of money in the budget each year over a 5-year period. Different roads in the maintenance plan will have different costs and may have different degradation at different paces from now to the point we get to it. So it's evaluated annually and then included in the capital improvement plan. On average, if we provide this, if I'm correct, Joe, we should be somewhere around that projection, but it's not a guarantee.
That's correct, Mark.
Yeah, so what we're doing here is network level. And you need to start at the network level. And then, Mark, like you said, that each year you're going to go out and you're going to assess the streets. Some are going to need less than what we had projected in the network, and some are going to need more. And then you'll have to make those adjustments to come under budget.
Makes sense. You more questions? Go ahead.
My only other question was just, and Mark, you may want to address it, it may be better suited for you after you've heard other questions, but how the the program goals that are listed in asset management, we talked about sidewalks and other stormwater things. I know stormwater, for one, is a upcoming cost, the process we're going to go through. Are the budget scenarios tied into these other program goals, or I believe I understood them say, we're going to try to move all these things together. Is there going to be, obviously, is there going to be a way to track these other program goals? Or are we going to try to just hit them all at the same time? What's the thought process there?
Yeah, that's moving from kind of asset management 1.0 to 2.0, if you will, is the ability to, if you're out there doing work on a road, if the curb and gutter or an ADA improvement or a sidewalk improvement or stormwater adjustment, if you have the contractor mobilized and can coordinate on a road, if your budget can afford it, doing multiple aspects at one time saves you long-term in a system cost. So understanding what our needs are and then being able to communicate that to a Raleigh Water and understand when they're doing water and sewer work or a Duke Energy or one of the other utilities when they're out there, so that we're not paving a road, avoid as much as possible paving a road and then having something torn up. When you have an asset management system, yes, sir, you can coordinate the different utilities, and it makes for smarter decision-making across all of the infrastructure.
Thank you.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner Deloach, on slide number 6, you have 25% of the roadway network is in need of significant repairs and rebuilding. What signifies, or what's the definition of significant repairs, rebuilding, and is there a PCI number associated with that?
This is Joe Turner. So the significant repairs, I will say that, as Steve mentioned, you're going to look each year at roads on a project level, and so each road will be individually analyzed for what that repair needs to be. For this project, we provided approximate costs, but really, once roads are identified and they are set, then each individual road will be analyzed for the type of repairs so that you're not treating all roads the same. And then I think your other question, what really kind of, we're using this survey, and the reason why this survey is so, important is that you can get an idea of what roads are in what condition. And so we look at the roads really in the bottom 2 or 3 categories, even in the poor category. So anything below a critical PCI of 55, we're really looking at roads there that we're estimating could need significant repairs.
Okay. And And just the reason for my question, if I figure poor or less, that's 6.6 miles, which is 20%. I was just wondering if, you know, there were roads in the fair category that were considered in need of significant repairs or rebuilding. I was just trying to get a grasp on the categories.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
One more point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Clarification. Commissioner Deloach, on page 7, $1 for rehabilitation here, $4 to $5 here. Is that, what unit is that in, or is that just for comparison to show that it's 4 to 5 times higher? Like $1?
It's really in
What unit?
right. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't hear the rest of your
No, I was
question.
just gonna say, it's $1 per what unit? Is that?
It really could be any unit.
Right. It's
It's
really
just like
just,
it's a, yeah.
So it's
go
just-
ahead, Steve.
Oh, yeah, it's, you know, it could be tons, it could be, you know, just dollars, but, you know, you're looking to spend 4 to 5 times more than
okay.
you would, than at the critical PCI.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question, Mayor.
Okay, I was going to ask you actually specifically. Go ahead, Commissioner Boyette.
And I apologize if this was gone over earlier because it cut out just a little bit, but how are unpaved roads graded in this system?
They
So-
yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead.
They're not included.
I was just gonna say is that we
Included.
don't rate the unpaved roads.
This is,
Okay,
hold on one second. This is Mark. Just to clarify, unpaved roads are not included, state roads are not included, private alleyways or parking lots are not included. It's just our Powell bill paved roads that are included in this survey.
And so if we were to choose to pave the unpaved roads, they would then be brought in they would be considered Powell bill roads?
Well, they would be, it would be an additional expense beyond what's presented in this study, and then they would become part of that program. Yes, sir.
For maintenance and
Okay,
upkeep, moving ahead.
Okay, yes.
As long as they're 16 foot in width or greater.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions? No. All right, well, thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Yes. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too. Item 4B is the locally administered projects program update, U 6244, EB 6048. I'm going to hear from Planning Director Nikki Jones. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Tonight I will be updating you all on LAP projects. So what does LAP mean? Well, LAP is a locally administered projects program. So basically that is a competitive funding program that is managed by CAMPO, which prioritizes transportation projects throughout the region and requires federal funds, and it's 20% match generally for the towns. In this case, actually, there's a 25% match. I'll go over that later. But generally, this funding comes out annually. So, quick project overview. There are two different LAP projects here, but they're in such close proximity to each other, we just decided to combine them. So U6244 is a roadway project. So that focuses on the intersection of Wendell Falls Parkway and Wendell Boulevard. EB6048 is a pedestrian project focusing on sidewalk connections and intersection improvements to Marshburn. So that's from Wendell Elementary-ish all the way up to Hanover-ish. There's some gaps in the sidewalk. And we did not come up with these project names. These are CAMPO names. We would have come up with something better. So it's important to note that these two projects advance strategic initiatives from the board and our pedestrian plan, so it's really a good thing. So again, this particular, well, actually 6244 specifically is a 75-25 match. The reason why we had to do that was to be competitive when we submitted for this. So here is just an overview of the project. You'll see to the east, Wendell Falls Parkway and the intersection of Wendell Boulevard. You'll notice Wall Street right there, Marshburn Road, and then Wendell Boulevard, going out towards the west. So use 6244. The intent here was to block off Wall Street. So we're going to close Wall Street off from the intersection, stop traffic from going that way. Then signalize the intersection, add curbing, pave the intersection, and the project's approximately going to cost $796,000. So I say approximately because when we put it out to bid, we have no idea what's going to happen. So here's a closer look at the intersection. You can see Wall Street blocked off and showing the signalized intersection there. EV 6048, again, is a sidewalk connection from, again, Academy Street-ish, IGA, Hanover Lane, or Hanover Drive. Pedestrian improvements at Marshburn and Wendell Boulevard, pretty important safety upgrades at that intersection. And this project cost is approximately $1 million. A closer view here, you can see there's going to be some pedestrian safety upgrades right there at the intersection. And that yellow going out west delineates the sidewalk. I think it's always important to provide the board with a chronology. So July 19, the board authorized staff to negotiate with Kimley Horn for design and engineering services. October of the same year, town board authorized a contract with Kimley Horn. February of this year, we had a public meeting held here at Town Hall pertaining to these two projects, obviously pre-COVID. And then September, found some drainage issues. There's some ponding at the intersection. And this goes to the staff analysis. So again, there was some ponding at the intersection during a heavy rainfall. We heard some complaints, and then we had our public works folks go out there to see what was going on. They excavated and realized that we needed to do some improvements with our storm pipe all the way down to Cook Street. So kudos to those guys for going out there and putting a temporary solution, temporary fix, and I want to emphasize this temporary. So we think that, if we ultimately put new stormwater pipe in this particular section of road, we can also do sidewalk at the same time because there are gaps in the sidewalk. So next steps. Staff's got a couple of options for the board. Option one, we could seek additional LAP funding. So again, it's an annual process. The caveat here is that the funding cycle is October 2020, so that's now. But we have Kimley Horn ready to go if we want to do that. One of the beauties of this particular option is that we can reduce our local match overall on the project. However, that being said, it will delay the project. And we aren't certain, but when you delay projects, there's a chance that the costs will go up because we don't know what's going to happen with labor and materials and all that good stuff. So option two is proceed as scheduled. It's a 50-50 match because if we proceed as scheduled, we can go back to Campo and ask for more money one more time, but it's at 50-50, not at 75-25. Okay. But the beauty of this is that both projects remain on schedule. I forgot to mention in option one, we would go forward with the pedestrian side. So EB 6048 would still go on as planned. I should have mentioned that, sorry. Also think it's important to show the fiscal impact or the potential fiscal impact of projects. So option one, the additional construction cost here would be an additional $625,000. Town match would be $220,000. So what would we get with option one? Well, with option one, in order for us to be competitive in that LAP funding cycle, we're going to have to run sidewalk as well as pipe. Would go all the way from the intersection of Wendell Falls or Wendell Boulevard along Wendell Falls Parkway all the way down to Cook Street. but we would continue sidewalk across the railroad track all the way down to Third Street. So what's going to make us competitive there is the connectivity. So we are going to get more, and that's why you're going to see that gap there. So option 2 provides new stormwater pipe from Wendell Boulevard along Wendell Falls Parkway down to Cook Street. Then it's going to cut over west to an outfall, and then that issue would be fixed. That's going to cost $400,000. And again, that'll be at 50/50. And our share, approximately $275. Because we have to factor into Kimley Horn creating an application for us, getting mobilized and all that good stuff. So that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, any questions from the board?
Nikki, sorry, Commissioner Joyner, on the match ratio in option 1, is showing 80/20. We're saying that's more likely to be 25 on our end.
This would be a new lap project.
Okay, I'm sorry.
80/20. So they think they can get us in with 80/20. This is from Kimley Horn, and that connectivity piece is going to make us competitive for the 80/20.
Commissioner Tarnaski, does that mean that will be a year put back? Is that the setback?
Yes, sir.
Set us back a year?
Yes, sir. Approximately.
Do you have thoughts on the continuate, like, you guys have obviously identified, or Kimberly Horn's identified that second section as being desirable. Does it simply make this project more desirable, or it doesn't appear, that doesn't sound to me like a standalone by itself lap project, that gap back to Third Street separate later?
The standalone lap project would be the stormwater, the whole combined package. But yes, just the connection from Cook Street to Third Street with the sidewalk, or even from Wendell Falls Boulevard with the sidewalk all the way down to Third Street wouldn't be the project by itself. The drainage is probably what makes it more of a project.
And to clarify, option 1 is a competitive grant process. There's no guarantee that we get funded. It may or may not, depending on what else is submitted in that given year for funding. If a lot of submissions come in, it's probably not that competitive of a project and wouldn't get funded. So in that case, we would have delayed the other project, potentially added additional construction cost to get going. The sidewalk project in either scenario, as Nikki was saying, advances. The Wendell Boulevard sidewalk portion and safety improvements on Marshburn, that's a separate project. If we're not funded in option 1, we can still come back and do option 2. It's just a year later in the process for the intersection improvements. Nikki and I talking today, I mean, we see the value of both. The staff recommendation at this time is option 2. But we're completely open to any suggestions. If timing is not important to the board and potentially having a lower cost share is more important, then we value that and we'll proceed with that.
Commissioner Deloach, so option 2 is let's say, a known quantity, whereas option 1 is a possibility on whether it's accepted. And we're pushing out, and we don't know what our costs may be a year down the road. So if we break it down dollar-wise, $55,000 additional is for, I use guaranteed, but
Certainty.
a little more certainty, peace of mind for $55,000.
That's
For lack of a
exactly,
better term.
that's exactly correct.
Yes.
And Commissioner Lutz here, just to make sure I'm also kind of understanding everything. Either way, the pedestrian project from Marshburn, Wendell,
Academy,
Uppish, that's happening regardless. We're good on that.
yes, sir.
Basically, we're talking about in the whole thing of redesigning this whole intersection, adding kind of this to it. Is that kind of, so if we I mean, is this all kind of be bundled in one project then, or?
They are two separate projects. So the pedestrian project is EB 6048. That's the one
Sure.
that's going to move forward regardless. 6244 is a project as well. The initial project was to block off Wall Street, do the curbing, and signalize the intersection.
Right.
And to clarify to that point, the stormwater has to be done to be able to receive the federal funding, any of the federal funding on the project. We have to resolve the stormwater ponding as well.
Yes.
And so that it's kind of an either-or option. There's not an option C of not adding either at this time.
Okay, and I guess that's my next question. So there's, the option of just doing the first two you showed us and just saying, that's it, is not really an option then. We need to do something with stormwater, we have to do that.
That's a requirement. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Well, I think Commissioner Deloach had a kind of good point, and I mean, yeah, when you look at the numbers and, option two, paying more, but you're getting a guarantee, you're not delaying the project, you're fixing a problem. Yeah, if it was a small, different, it seems more important than waiting and then risking, so.
They're gonna take place close enough in time too, that it may have an appearance to people that it's all one big thing. But from a funding standpoint, they are two separate projects.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Correct. I mean,
That's
so
correct,
it may
and-
look,
But
I
you're
mean,
positive at the same
we're all kind of thinking of it, must be one big area, but we did cobble it all together, kind of.
We did, but you're correct, and there is a possibility that we could save money on mobilization costs as well.
Because they're at the same
They're
time.
so
Because it is
close.
gonna happen close enough together, and I think the public, when they're riding through and being inconvenienced by it a little bit, sometimes it's gonna seem like one big project to them, so.
Mayor, that's a good point. Option two has all that disruption around the same time.
Yeah,
Option one may extend that project out the full
Yeah.
year to where it's under construction, the additional.
and it seems like it won't end.
Well, I'll say this too, this is my time on the board, I mean, gosh, my first term here, I mean, I think that right away we were talking about how to handle that intersection, and
Yes.
we put a no left turn, we took all these kind of weird options, and then we're still sitting here, and so I think the idea of taking a stance and getting it going is,
Great.
also speaks kind of volumes to the citizens, so,
Yes.
yeah.
It has been something we've been talking about for 6 years,
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
so I definitely think. But, so what's everybody thinking? I think it's no action on this, but does everybody have some input? Have we heard from Commissioner Boyette?
I'm option two all the way, Mayor.
Okay. So have you got what you need?
We've got direction, yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right, item 4C is the continued discussion of the downtown service comparatives for parking, food trucks, electric vehicle charging, lighting, and solid waste service. We're going to hear from Assistant to the Manager Stephanie Smith again. Good evening.
Good evening. I am back again to continue our discussion of downtown service comparatives. As you'll recall, at the September 14th meeting, presented several topics related to downtown service comparatives. Wanted to give you all some time to review the information, speak to constituents, and we are bringing back status quo plans or policies for each of the items. So the packet in front of you is just the text version of the presentation that I'm going to go through this evening. Again, the topics are parking, food trucks, electric vehicle charging, lighting, and solid waste service. I'll revisit each topic, present a brief recap of what we discussed last time, and then a plan or policy that captures how we are currently handling each topic, and then give you the opportunity to provide feedback before moving on to the next topic.
Great.
Again, recap, this is your downtown mixed-use zoning district, so we are on the same page of what area we're talking about in town. First up is parking. At the last meeting, we shared that we have received feedback from community members and business owners that it is difficult at times to find parking downtown, particularly in front of businesses they want to visit specifically. There is a need for additional wayfinding signage to indicate public parking, so we will be working with public works staff to install those after leaf season and holiday decorations. Busyness calms down a bit. We did compile some different options for consideration, so again, here's the table I shared at the last meeting. Goes over pros and cons of maintaining current parking, imposing time limits through signage, parking meters, a hybrid, or the restriction of no overnight parking. So the status quo would be installing signage to indicate golf cart parking, electric vehicle parking, and no parking zones, as well as public parking wayfinding signage to help people find existing parking opportunities. We would also evaluate restriping of certain areas and evaluate areas currently unstriped to see if they would warrant to be striped. Police will also begin basic parking enforcement as defined by state statute, beginning with education efforts. So the parking issues that we're experiencing downtown start to work on correcting some of the illegal parking that we are currently experiencing. Any questions or feedback on that topic?
Any comments, questions? Commissioner Boyette, any comments or questions?
No, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you have one,
Did he
Louis?
say yes or, did he have?
I think he said no.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Weeks, I'll just make a comment here. I felt the status quo was fine on this one. The idea of parking meters, the idea of, more signs at this point seemed a little bit, headstrong. I think anything we can do to increase the number of visible spots is always good, and therefore I think the striping and the signage is good. And that's kind of what my thoughts were.
I agree. I think we definitely need some directional signage. We have some increased places that I think folks just don't know about on Pine and the ones we went through last time, and I think we need to just let them know that there is available parking. It might be a block. It's not too bad in some instances. I think we need to talk about large vehicle overnight parking. I live near there, and I do see a lot of large vehicles that get left there. I've seen 18-wheel trucks. I've seen all kinds of things left there. I don't want to not allow a car to stay there because someone may need to leave their car if they have stayed at one of our establishments too long. They may need to catch a ride with someone else. So I certainly don't want to discourage that and create any inconvenience for that, but I don't know about I just want to think about the large vehicle parking and definitely the signs for the small spots. For the golf cart spots, and I've received numerous complaints and comments about that, about people parking and hanging over into the next one, and come on, folks, you know your car doesn't fit there. I mean, but we need to take care of that, as well. Any other comments from the board?
I'll just say, Commissioner Deloach, I'll just point out that status quo doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. You know, signage is important. I'm all about being proactive, but I'm not necessarily excited about being overreaching. So I think there's some areas of concern that I think we're addressing with signs. I agree with Mayor about the, large vehicles, overnight parking. There are places for that other than downtown.
Yeah.
And we don't want to discourage our citizens from overnight. I do think that we need to have some signage for our farmers market and that kind of thing. To alleviate some of those issues that we're having now, but, again, status quo doesn't mean we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Commissioner Tarnasky, I'm not really in favor of the parking meters, like paid parking, and on the spots, the limited time's good, maybe 20 to 30-minute spots for picking up, coming in and out, maybe just on the corners downtown, not everywhere, just so people can run in and pick up food and leave. Yeah. Just a spot on each end of the downtown where they can just run in and get something, 20 to 30 minutes, so they're always turning over those spots. And handicap spots, for the elderly and things like that. There's not maybe easy access in a few corners where they can get in and out easier or something. Okay. Especially on the end there where there's, people go to Larry's, the tailor shop there, and maybe right in front of the bank, there could be a handicap spot there where they can kind of roll up for now until that's fixed to a handicap spot on the end there. You know what I mean? Because they can't go up those steps. So just something to think about there.
Okay.
But I definitely like the overnight parking just in case someone needs to leave their vehicle there, get home safely. And maybe put signs where, like you said, where they have the market Saturday mornings, just no parking here overnight, but other spots are all right. Stuff like that. So, thank you.
There are a lot of places where you go up and you see, 15-minute parking, 30-minute parking. I don't see why we couldn't have a few of those scattered around, I agree with that. And the handicap as well, we'd have to place those in certain spots right now where they had, we're close to a ramp, so that might be challenging right now, but I do think we need that. So, any other comments about parking?
Madam Mayor, I was just wanted to, all of these are admirable and they all have a place.
Yeah.
But I think any of them, any changes that we make specifically in our DMX are always going to be impactful. I think the first step is obviously signage, because each of the steps beyond that are an escalation of that policy. I'm happy to support signage and look at escalation if it's a problem in the future. And for the record, I hope that it is a problem in the future, because parking issues downtown is a good thing. So I hope this is a continued thing that we work through. But obviously, uniform signage throughout would be, and I think I say uniform intentionally because as we grow, we need to be able to use, we need to get people familiar with the signage and how things
Recognize.
operate. And
Something
then make them-
recognizable and continuity throughout. Yes, I agree with that. And I do think, like I said before, and I think this is something that Commissioner Joyner's leading up to, we have a lot of places down there that I think people just don't know about. And I think if we could direct people, we have a lot of newcomers and visitors now, and direct them to Pine Street and beyond, I think that they would find those spots very convenient.
Okay, thank you.
If that's all, let's move to food trucks.
All right, next up is food trucks. Again, the recap from last meeting. We currently use our use of public space policy to approve food trucks downtown. Businesses request to bring in a food truck for a particular date and time or series of dates and times. We provide a signed letter approving the use of our public space for a food truck. Food truck requests are increasing with the addition of businesses downtown. We do not have a formal food truck policy, so that's something for the board to consider. There's a list of some consistent policy elements in neighboring jurisdictions who have adopted those food truck policies. And again, as a recap, these are the neighboring jurisdictions, whether or not they have a food truck or mobile vendor policy, and if they charge fees. So the status quo for this one would be to bring back an actual policy that captures what the current process is. So again, those requests for food truck on our public property, including dates and times, we would provide that signed letter. Currently, the process does not limit the number of trucks, where they should be located, how often they can be brought in, and for how long. So without any changes, we would bring back just an official policy to capture that process for your approval at the next meeting.
At this time, do we limit them to Campen and Depot, or can they be?
The
We don't
request,
have a policy, but how are we acting right now?
we're unofficially placing them at Campen and Depot, mainly for public safety. There's a better way for them to queue up, but that's not captured in an official policy capacity.
Okay. Because that would be my preference, and I would definitely like them to not be plunked right in front of a brick and mortar restaurant. I think that's just terrible form, not bad form, terrible form. And I like the idea of a host to operate. I don't think a food truck should just drive up and stop. I think they should be in conjunction with a business. Helps with a contact person and things like that. I don't know about limiting the number. I don't know how y'all feel about that. I don't like the idea of limiting the number of times a business can do that. I think that's just too much bureaucracy. I do like the quiet generators. Let's see, as far as a fee, I just don't know about that. This really varies from town to town, some none, the whole way up to $160. Is that an annual fee?
Yes.
So does the food truck pay that for the right to come to your town, for that town?
Typically, they submit a permit
So it's a
to the
permit.
finance department, and they pay a fee along with that permit application, and that's kept on file for typically a fiscal year, and then that gets renewed every fiscal year.
Okay. That seems almost like a privilege license.
But not.
Saying. Okay, well, I don't know what I think about the fee. I have mixed feelings about that. What does everybody else think about the food trucks?
I'll jump next. So I think it's important to remember for everybody in context, and, we've got new staff here as well as lots of new residents, and 16% 4% more roads than we had 4 years ago. A lot of things are growing. There was a very recent time where we all but encouraged the parking of food trucks directly in front of what is now an open business because the business wasn't open. The flexibility that our lack of policy provided during that time was very helpful in some of the retail businesses around it having nighttime flow. Completely want to maintain the benefits of food trucks because they do bring in their own following. They bring in, generally speaking, things that aren't here. Generally speaking, things that aren't sold in one restaurant because they are serving a smaller demographic that they know is moving. And it also provides a competitive edge to us in festivals, but then also during unknown times like 2020 where the game changes and having a big nice restaurant, a big nice steakhouse in Main Street is a thing that I've heard about for 6 years, and I can only think that over the past 6 months it would have been closed greatly, and this becomes a resource to us. If you want something to go away, tax it. If you want less participation in something, charge a fee for it. I can completely see where all of our surrounding communities that have chosen to do this and charge a fee are well within their right, and I don't find any of the fees particularly objectionable. I think that the only decision we really need to make there is, in my opinion, a policy one, whether or not we feel like it's you either want to do it or you don't.
Yeah.
And then I would really rather refer to staff to allow them to figure out what that rate needs to be. I certainly don't think that hosting, I do not believe that I should be able to host a food truck and have it directly in front of your place of business. That said, I feel like we've created a bit of an environment for food trucks. So I think what I'll call passive policies to push people towards those spaces is something that I would certainly encourage. The rest of these are really things that I had a conversation with Commissioner Deloach about this yesterday. 3rd Street and Main Street was not a happening spot until 4 months ago. It was the middle of Main Street. That's where everything was, and nothing was happening in that alleyway. We're going to move, have that effect sometimes. Our policy needs to be similar to the street sign comment. We need to put a bare bones piece in place that establishes the ground rules that we're all good with. I think you've identified several of those. And then as needed, we can go back to address each of these. What I don't want to do is rush to create a policy that we know fits us perfectly right now because we're a growing community, and I wouldn't want to go buy a really expensive suit. That's a thing I used to get to wear a lot when I went out in public. But I wouldn't want to go buy a suit knowing that I'm growing and knowing that we're growing in a dynamic way downtown. I don't think this is one we can draw a really big square around. I think this is one that we have to give it a framework and let it grow and see where it goes.
Yep. Anyone else? Commissioner Boyette? Okay, Commissioner Deloach?
I'll just say that I think we've outlined some great things here. If we're going to limit where food trucks are able to park, I think we're in essence limiting the number, the times, that kind of thing. So I'm okay with that. I do agree with the quiet generators. There's nothing worse than a loud generator. And I have no issue with a fee, honestly. I don't know what that fee should look like, but I do not have an issue with a fee. I think food trucks are great. I've enjoyed it. I've got nothing but positive feedback from most folks. And, I want to continue to encourage that, but also know, just like Commissioner Joyner said, what we look like today versus what we're going to look like 18 months from now is probably going to be very different.
I just have a quick comment. Joe, Commissioner Deloach, are we finished? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Commissioner Lutz here, and I kind of agree with what Commissioner Jordan said earlier. We had these policies very lax. We tried to get food trucks into town because people were telling us they wanted variety of restaurants. So this gave us a chance to have a little bit more variety, have something each weekend that was just a little different. And it's great that we've gotten to the point where now we're having, you know, one a day probably, I'd say somewhere downtown. I do think a permit is good. I think a fee is good. I think from the same reason I would want to have a fee on a food truck, and this may not be good logic, but I feel like I want to encourage it, but I'd also want to make sure that we are being somewhat respectful of other businesses who have invested time, real estate into the town. And I know this in no way equalizes things at all, but I do think it, to some degree, has them have a little skin in the game. I don't think it should be $160. I think that seems crazy, but I think something small would be enough, even like Fuquay has with $30. You know, they'll sell, you know, a couple sandwiches and make it up. And I think most people probably are on a weekend or wouldn't blink at that. And then talking to Commissioner Deloach earlier, one comment he had made that I think was a good thing he said was having them further down kind of where the mural is now. I think that serves greatly and it leaves more parking for people out front. And I know sometimes they need the electric hookup there too, but I think that's also a fantastic idea, one option.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would definitely not want them on Main Street again.
No.
I feel like we did that for a period of time when we had no restaurants down there and very little traffic, and it's a safety issue, honestly, and I just don't think we need to have one on Main Street at all. And I want to make sure that the ones that we have on Campen and Depot, or Campen even, are not too close to the restaurants that we have on the next block up, 41 North and Aubrey's. You know, you can't be expected to come here and have a business, a brick and mortar business, and then have someone just pull up in a truck right outside your door and they have no skin in the game, as they said. I don't think that's fair either. So I think we need to have that distance, you know, let them have their spot. They've been here a while, and that's disrespectful to them. All right, any other comments?
Pretty much covered it.
So for this one, since there are some changes to the status quo, what I'll do is bring back a draft policy for the board to review, and then that'll give businesses in the community an opportunity to review and provide their feedback on that draft.
Great.
Before the board would decide. Okay. Next is electric vehicle charging. So again, a recap, we have 2 electric vehicle charging stations. We have identified the need to discuss whether or not there should be regulations in terms of how long people can park and if there should be a charge. We do have plans to create a web page once they are electrified to put on our website to let people know about their availability. Hopefully it would be a draw for people who are looking for locations to charge their vehicle. Right now we have 2 stations on East Campen Street, but expect that we'll be adding more in the future as we continue to make building improvements and road improvements. So the status quo would be install signage indicating electric vehicle parking only. So those spots would be restricted to cars that are there to charge. And then from there, we would monitor use and cost. So the status quo would be no fees would be implemented at this time. We could, of course, revisit that and implement fees down the road.
No fees?
The status quo would be no fees, correct.
There should be charge, right, for usage, or?
So do you feel like we should charge to use the charging station?
Okay.
I mean, like, 'cause I pay for gas, you know,
So,
you should pay for electricity.
so I don't see the electric vehicles or the charging stations here being, as being a charging, I don't see them as a gas station. I view them a little bit differently as a destination device. It's a thing that, I've never ridden in one of the fancy cars that have it, but I've been told, identify where those are. So if someone is riding between Raleigh and Rocky Mount, I want them to want to pull into the center of our downtown core. And if a little bit of electricity brings them here, that's great. In that same vein, that looks like a pretty sophisticated charging machine we have there. And my thought was, the folks installing it, is there a way that we could have staff monitor reports so we know what usage is, generally speaking, how long people are using them for?
Yes.
And kind of capture that data in maybe a year and say, what does this look like? Obviously, I don't think we're gonna, I have a feeling that this is gonna be underutilized for a while, and I certainly want to, since it's there, incentivize its use until such time that we know, hey, we have a consistent market of people that are showing up, primarily because I know what those vendors will charge to let us charge, and I have a feeling that at least for the foreseeable future, it's gonna be more for us to attempt to charge than it is for us to allow this one to be sort of like watering balls outside or other things that we provide in our downtown core to try to attract people. That's just my thoughts on it. So it would be, in my opinion, status quo plus a little bit of high-tech monitoring through that through the charging station itself, and see if we can figure out if in fact it's being used as a gas station or if it's a series of quick parking.
I definitely wouldn't want people to just park there and sit there. I want it to be available for charging, and even if when you're charged, you need to move. I mean, I don't know if we can, how to manage that or not. So I think what I understand Commissioner Joyner saying is that you want it to be an economic development tool right now, and then evaluate in a year or so and see if it's, okay.
Similar to the approach we took with signs. Let's get a baseline, let's monitor it, let's see what we're...
Right. Does anyone else have any thoughts about it?
I'll make a comment.
Yeah.
Commissioner Deloach, just speaking with a few owners, you know, it's not intended as a gas station. It's not a hangout, you know, park all day, read a book. Generally, your electric vehicle folks are there. They're parking, they're charging, they're out and about spending dollars in the community. It is 100% a destination thing. And being on plug share charge point is a big deal and totally creates what I envisioned it to be, which was a destination for people to spend their dollars in downtown. I just don't, the electric vehicle crowd is not taking advantage of the situation, in my mind. But I think if we monitor that, then, you know, certainly we'll know that pretty quick.
Take a look at it. Anyone else behind me? Commissioner Boyette? I don't know if he can hear me or not. I hadn't heard him in a while. So you got everything you need for electric charging?
Thank you.
Okay. Move to lighting.
Next up is lighting. I don't know if you can hear me in the microphone. Sorry. So recap, well, one moment.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyette, can you try speaking again, please?
Yes, how about now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Did you have any
Oh,
comments
okay, excellent.
on
Yes, I
well-
did have a couple of points about the electric vehicle charging.
Okay.
As far as the cost goes, of providing the electricity, I think even if the electric car is about dead, it's only about 20 cents worth of electricity to charge it up anyway. We'd probably pay more in transaction fees, than we would make charging for the electricity used. I understand the sort of principle of the matter of charging for energy, pardon the pun. But, I don't think any reasonable rate that we charge, if we were to charge for it, wouldn't even cover our costs, for the transaction fees. Some of the bigger issues I have, sort of tie back in with the whole food truck thing. We put in the charging stations and sort of, co-located some electrical access for food trucks. And we located all those in the same place because that's where we ran electric power to. And so when there is a food truck there, the food truck normally gets there
in the late afternoon or somewhat earlier to set up, and basically blocks some, if not all, of those parking spaces. And so if we're talking about having food trucks downtown to attract, and now we're showing that we have electric parking spaces, you know, if they're blocked by the food truck, that doesn't really sort of serve that purpose, and I'm not sure what the way to deal with that is. The other thing is how aggressive are we going to be enforcing parking in those spaces for vehicles that are not electric? When I went by, I drove through downtown the other weekend, and there were, I believe, three electric vehicle parking spaces that were not blocked by the food truck, and all three of them had vehicles parked in there, and none of those vehicles were electric vehicles. And so my question is how aggressive are we going to be policing those parking spots or enforcing the parking of electric-only vehicles in those spots? And do we have a solution, especially about the food trucks and where we're putting the food truck, so that we're not blocking those spaces with vendors?
Have y'all talked about that?
We can work that out in the policy that we bring
Okay.
back to you,
Okay,
but we just wanted your questions and feedback to be
Okay.
able to have that conversation.
okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Boyette? In case you haven't
No.
been able, okay, I just wanted to make sure, I don't think you could get in. All right, so now we're going to move to lighting.
Okay, as you'll recall, this was the one item that we pretty much brought a recommendation at the previous meeting, so we're bringing that back again. Recap, some of our downtown lights are still owned and maintained by the town. We are interested in transitioning those lights to be leased through Duke Energy. So that would be for 49 lights in the DMX zoning district. As we move forward, new lights that are added, those are leased lights, so this would be bringing those lights up to what we are doing when new lights are installed. So the status quo plan would be we would work to coordinate the effort to convert all lights to a lease with other strategic initiatives and capital projects, and possibly time those light replacements with a streetscape design improvement.
All right, great. Anybody have anything to add again on that? All right.
All right.
There's
Last but not
solid waste.
least, solid waste service. So recap, we have received requests from downtown businesses to access dumpsters. We talked about the aesthetics of having multiple dumpsters in multiple locations and sort of the inconsistencies of the inappropriate use of the current containers with contamination, and then small cans being used by some businesses to dispose of their trash. We talked about the prioritization of the DMX zoning district to improve aesthetics and generate interest in private investment. So we did provide some options. This was the exhaustive list of options for different dumpster solutions for your consideration. The status quo would be the current dumpster locations will service existing businesses. Businesses would continue to be responsible for finding ways to dispose of trash and recycling individually. And then as we continue to grow and as conditions would allow, dumpsters could be added as part of future budgets.
Commissioner Luther, I just have one comment. It kind of just ties into the parking situation. The dumpster that is on, I'm drawing a blank on it. Help me out, somebody. Campton, thank you. I always feel like that takes up a lot of prime parking spaces. I don't know the ability to other locations for that, or, and I don't, this is just me talking, but I always feel like that would take away some parking spots, you know, in an area that would be prime parking.
You mean along the railroad tracks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I don't know if there'd be any other locations for that, or that may not directly interfere with that, so.
I just don't know if there's any other places to put some.
And there may not be.
That's, because I agree with you, I've had the same thought.
So there's an ability to shift it further down so that from a proximity to Main Street, like how far the pedestrian has to walk can be improved. So we're able to shift those to the end of the block down by Cypress, and that would free up parking closer to Main and the active businesses. At the point that block fills out at some point in the future with structures, then it's still the same issue of taking up the same number of spaces. our issue is always, there's a very limited space of private property for any kind of waste disposal. When they are able to put it on, it's very visible. And so it's, are we able to do a screened service on public property, to kind of continue what we're doing? I think that one, screening and shifting down, might provide some proximity.
I have a vague recollection that we've talked about that before, and when, the closer you get to Cypress, you know, there's the hill there on Cypress, that it's not as flat, and that was why they wound up where they are. Does that make sense? Brian, that might make sense, but I may be wrong. But it seems like I remember that that's something I was told at one time.
If the town was going to dedicate that kind of space and shift it, my recommendation would be to prepare the concrete pad that can
Right.
withstand the wear and tear.
And not just move
Do the screening,
yeah.
just like was done on the other side of Campen. Eventually, the west side of Campen is gonna need its
Right.
day with the pavement condition replacement and sidewalks put on, also, so that, you know, that asset
We
management.
could take care of that leveling problem and not just move it, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that was the concern, and I think that's why they wound up where they are, to be honest, okay.
Commissioner Loach, I think we addressed this, obviously it's something that's critical. Perhaps it needs more discussion. We do have a lot of options here, maybe we need more options. And quite honestly, this is the thing that I've probably had the least amount of discussion on with citizens and business owners. But again, this is one of those things that when we look down the road, we need to be proactive, but how many restaurants will we have? Who will we need to service? And what does that look like? And what is the cost of that going to be? So just factors that I consider.
For comments received from staff, we received a request from farmers and merchants. They have limited space and they want to do that improvement with the patio deck and back. So while they could solve it elsewhere, it would be helpful if that service was there. 41 North has inquired. Petey's has recently put in a dumpster on East Depot Street in that area. The general store has had a dumpster before on East Campen. So there's this placement of private property on public property without public property approval that's part of this issue.
And it's very haphazard
Yeah.
and random, just wherever.
Yeah, the private use of the public space, people don't want the public to come on their private property and do things without permission. The taxpayer needs that same consideration as anybody else. And so there's a benefit to providing that service. And so staff's been working on that location and providing equitable access to all points within the downtown over time as part of this. And so, you know, if the board is okay with that general direction of providing general trash and cardboard service, recycling, and then one cardboard downtown kind of centrally, then we'll just start spacing that out over time as we do improvements.
And adding them in as appropriate.
Yeah. Our bigger need right now is on the west side with the additions of farmers merchants.
Yeah.
And 41 North has a large number of containers that would be an aesthetic improvement over there as well.
And the way some of those businesses are located tight within each other, and as they grow, and some of them reopen after the danger of COVID passes, and they feel like they can reopen their dining rooms, there's going to be even more, and they're tight, they're together, they're shoulder to shoulder, and it's difficult for them to have a place to have even a rolling can. There's nowhere to put it, or they're piled all up in different places, and so, you know, maybe it would be it would certainly be more attractive downtown.
I had one question or concern. That was brought up to me, when we do place these or whatever, to make sure there's good lighting and stuff, because sometimes there's teenagers and young kids working, and getting their trash out there late at night when they're closing up. People might be around, they've been harassed before and stuff, I've heard things, so. Or
Restaurants.
felt like they were fouled or something,
Yeah,
and it's
restaurants
nighttime,
and bars
just, there's
and things
well-lit
like that,
areas.
yeah. For sure. Anything else?
So,
Go ahead.
when we had conversations last time, I was trying to perfect where the dumpsters should be. And the more I thought about that, I am not the person to pick those locations. I can come close, but I know that in the way that we describe the way it currently exists is a series of separate arrangements among private business owners that we're trying to, in all honesty, coordinate and do things that maybe we should have been doing to help them get a little bit better coordination. So I've got two fears. One is there's existing good working relationship that's working well for somebody, and we're going to come in and tell them that's not the plan anymore. The second is there's the other person that's in that good working relationship that doesn't feel like it's a good working relationship and desperately wants another option, and they never hear about this. I feel like we have kind of drilled down more on this tonight. This is another conversation I've had with others, but would ask staff to consider, when you're to what you feel like is a drilled down options point, working with the chamber to have them send out a survey that you guys produce. You give them the survey, allow them to give you feedback from the business community, and allow the chamber to kind of weigh in. That can flow back to us, but obviously you guys are starting to walk in that direction. I just feel like a lot of folks have probably heard about it, some may not have, so I think communicating it through the chamber would absolve me of both of those fears.
Okay. Be sure, though, with regard to the chamber, everybody might not be a member yet, a new business or something, so we certainly wouldn't want to forget someone. That's the last thing that we need to have happen, so we make sure we cover all the bases. So. And I think as far as to your point about good relationships, I've had enough of them mention it to me, and I believe the managers had a few conversations, and different ones of us have, that I think they kind of see this coming and are waiting for us to maybe put something out there and then give us some input. So I think it's going to be okay. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, staff has a draft map with being able to provide the service with an equitable distance from all downtown businesses in about 4 or 5 different locations spread out around downtown right now, as opposed to the 2 that we have currently. So there's a nominal cost increase with the additional service, but it's definitely an enhanced service offering for downtown, and hopefully would address the aesthetics and misuse of smaller containers, and just let the public fill those up for Public Works to haul off. But yeah, this has been something that we've consistently during this process been asked by downtown businesses to be involved with and help them solve that, and definitely welcome their feedback.
And it's been done in a way that there's not going to be a good business location or a bad one that has to walk further, or it's going to be spread out nicely for everyone. Okay, so have you got what you need on that so far?
Yep.
All right.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, public hearings. We had no public hearings scheduled for tonight. Let's move on to item 6A, a zoning map amendment to rezone 50.63 acres from rural residential to residential 3, located at 0 Eagle Rock Road, PIN number 17747248863, and we're going to hear from, I have down here Planning Director Nikki Jones, but you're not Planning Director Nikki Jones.
No. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Assistant Planning Director Brian Coates. The item before you tonight was your public hearing from last month.
Right.
The applicant is Amanda Bambrick with 520 State Street LLC. It's a rezoning for 50.63 acres along Eagle Rock Road. Current zoning is rural residential. Request is residential 3. We did get an email in about 6 o'clock from the applicant and the Anderson family and Mr. Hibbets, who represented the Andersons, that they came to an agreement they have a couple site plan agreements that they worked out. I'll let the applicants, if they have anything to say, talk about that, but the email came in at 6 that there's just some site plan things that they agreed upon as
Okay.
the project moves forward.
Okay, are the applicants with us?
Amanda, are you on the phone, or Mr. Hibbets?
If any of the applicants are on the line, hit star on your phone 2 times to unmute yourself, please.
Hey, this is Amanda. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, sorry about that. I didn't know about the double stars. Thanks.
Learn something new every day.
Absolutely. Although I never think I'm going to learn all of this. So,
No, me neither.
yeah, and I'm definitely not going to speak for Richard or his rep if they're on the phone, but we have been going back and forth for several days at this point, trying to think about ways to kind of deal with some of the concerns that we had, but also sort of make for some sort of plan for future planning so that the conversation moves forward, not necessarily at the rezoning period, but at site plan, which is where really I think the rubber hits the road in terms of the access point. So again, not speaking for Richard, I'm sure they're on, but we basically came up with a couple of different agreements where we are going to work together to formulate and to set aside some land at the site planning stage that would potentially accommodate a cul-de-sac. We don't know if the cul-de-sac will be built, but we feel like that would resolve some of the Anderson family concerns if we get to that point, but we've basically agreed to set that land aside and to work with them at the site planning phase just to see how that's going to look moving forward. And I believe that everybody was satisfied with that compromise and sort of just agreeing to agree in good faith that those pieces of the conversations are going to move forward, and that we're really working together to sort of figure out the shared access. So I feel good about it. I don't know if Richard or TC or any of the Anderson folks are on, but that's kind of where we landed, and we got that kind of buttoned up today. So I felt really good about it.
Okay, great. Is Mr. Hibbets or any of the Andersons on?
I don't know if Richard is on, but this is Ashley, and you know, we appreciate everybody working together to pull something together this afternoon, and you know, we've reached an agreement that we feel like addresses hopefully all of the concerns.
That's good to hear. Wonderful. All right. Is Richard on? Does he have anything to say? Just want to make sure I give everybody a chance. Okay. Is there any discussion from the board? Do I have a motion from the board?
Madam Mayor, I just say working together works, and I make a motion to approve the rezoning request of 50.3 acres from RR to R3.
All right, we have a motion to approve the zoning map amendment request from rural residential to residential 3. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Nay.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
Okay, so that passes 4-1. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item 6B is a locally administered projects program, another LAP update for U5323, which is the intersection of Business 64, Roseville Road, and Eagle Rock Road, and we're going to hear from Planning Director Nikki Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again. As I said, tonight I'll be doing LAP updates. So I've already gone over what the LAP is. Quick project overview. So Eagle Rock Road, Wendell Boulevard, Roseville Road, that's the intersection. And, you know, I think when the project initially started, there was concern about high traffic volumes, potential safety challenges. So we conducted traffic and engineering planning there, so some of that has occurred. At the end of the day, I think there was a vision of a realignment of Rollsville Road. Some of you all may be familiar with U 5323. It's been around for a while. So again, I think the vision was to realign Rollsville Road and Eagle Rock Road, kind of shifting traffic further away from the intersection. Just so everybody knows where we are, that red circle that looks like my daughter drew it, that was me. The intersection is to the west. East Wake High School is to the north. Eagle Rock Road, as you can see, makes this kind of sharp left turn. And here's what was envisioned there. Certainly not a bad idea. It's just been a really long time, and we're kind of at a critical point right now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here shortly. But this was the vision. This project's been around since 2011. LAP funds for design and engineering received in 2011. We contracted with a consultant in 2014. To date, we have 25% design. 2017, there were some changes made to the alignment, so we had to do some retweaking there, if you will. And in 2020, staff kind of sat down and we had to hammer it out and reviewed and evaluate the project's viability. Campo policy here. The reason why I've got the 80-20 split here is it's important because that includes design. So we got design funds for this, so it was an 80-20 match. There is a September 2021 hard deadline, okay? By that time, we have to complete 65% design. We are at 25% design. In order for us to get an updated design cost, that's going to be about $380,000, maybe a little more. In addition to that, we've got to follow all NEPA rules, so that's the National Environmental Policy Act. There's a lot of documentation associated with that. In addition to that, we have to complete right-of-way acquisition, which we do not have funding for. In addition to that, we must get construction drawings done prior to 2021. So staff analysis is that the current design is pretty good. We think we can use that for the future. Specifically, when future development comes and there's some additional traffic impact, so future development such as Wake Tech. Bottom line is, we just don't have enough time to meet the deadline.
Yeah.
Staff recommendation is that we hold on to that 25% design and pay for it, pay the Federal Highway Administration, I think it's approximately $130,000. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the board?
Madam Mayor, just a comment. I appreciate staff's recommendation, and I agree with it. That particular corridor, even when it was in its prettiest shape and it was the prettiest plan that was there, also didn't fix the traffic issue that we have here. I think the town board was right in 2017 in a transportation plan to try to address that. And I'm kind of, to a degree, glad we did, being as we would have been bisecting what is now going to be Wake Tech. I will say that Wake Tech going there is one of the things that makes me feel less heartburn about this. I've been quoted on a lot of things in my life. This is an issue that we've been dealing with for a long time, and I was quoted as saying if DOT wants their money, they can come get it, because it was a bad design from the beginning. This is also why I leaned towards option 2 earlier tonight in our lab projects, because in almost everything, time kills deals. I think the board that voted for this and was working to fix a problem they were dealing with, to their credit, a potential industrial site on the other side. They were looking at other development pressures and needs, and then a little bit of economic downturn. I hate to see us, give back funds. I think that there's gonna be a lot of funds that are sent back to DC, in the coming future. I appreciate the way we're going about our lap process now, and would just ask that there has to be a little bit better way, long-term, of dealing with these locally administered projects when we are truly, Wendell is now in an economic position that we can weather this loss, this hiccup. The smaller communities that lean on their metropolitan planning organizations or their rural organizations to be able to go after these dollars, when they have a change, they don't have the ability often to come back up with that cash. So this is less of a critique of our particular experience in this process and more of a critique of the process for the places like where I grew up that would not be able to cover this loss. It's a win for us. I appreciate the fact that we're going to save funds here, but still a little bit of heartburn. And I know that the Campo process is focused on things 20 and 30 years from now, but the first time that I remember seeing this number, we were in a much different budgetary situation, and I have to think there's a lot of communities that are about to be in similar situations.
Any other comments from the board? I agree with you. I never liked the plan that they gave us. I thought it was horrible, and they kept tweaking it and messing with it, and they claimed safety with brand-new drivers leaving Eastway High School, but they had them come around and do a U-turn to go, I mean, I feel like you claim to be fixing one problem that you're creating another one. I don't know. I've never been real happy with it, so I'm happy to know that maybe we can make some adjustments in the future that reflect the new face of what it's going to look like down there. So, any other comments from the board? Commissioner Boyette?
My mother said if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, so
All right.
I'm gonna just be quiet about this one.
All right. It's a good policy sometimes. Anyone else? All right. Do I have a motion? No, it's got to be
Actually,
voted.
we do.
It's action.
It is action required.
If we could, it's not a allocated expense in the current budget, so we would need a motion to proceed, and this amount will be due this October. So we would need a motion to proceed with reimbursing the LAP project for the 25% design funds. And then we'll correct that by budget amendment at the end of year budget amendment from reserve funds, if not within savings within the budget.
Commissioner Lutz, I'll make a motion to repay the 25% design funds used for this LAP project.
Okay, we have a motion to proceed on the reimbursement of the 25% LAP funds, the design funds. Commissioner Joyner?
Aye.
Commissioner Deloach?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutz?
Aye.
Commissioner Tornaski?
Aye.
Commissioner Boyette?
Aye.
All right, that passes. All right, other business, update from town board members. The first one is Campo, actually. So we had Campo on September 16th last week. It fell on a weird week this month. So I was in and out of the virtual meeting, but I did get all hit the most important parts. We held a public hearing on the fiscal year 2020-2029 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment Number 2. There have been some changes to some regional projects, that's kind of what we've been discussing tonight. Things are kind of in flux right now. There have been some changes, though, to the Transportation Improvement Program, as well as changes from the updated Wake Transit Plan, so that was regarding that. We received information about the freeway and street-based transit network study. The goal is to better weave together the various existing transportation options with any that are new and planned. That's nice to hear that we're trying to use some things that we already have instead of spending. We received information about 540 Phase 1 and 2, updates on that. It's been broken up into sections based on timeframes, the order that it's going to proceed in, the approximate costs, and the approximate dates that it'll be finished, which is likely to get pushed back. We received information and funding updates about various other CAMPO projects and programs, SPOT, LAP, information about funding, and approved LAP projects deadline extension because some folks are needing some more time, and various staff reports that we get every single time, like from the Railroad Authority and stuff like that. All right, the other one is the Technical Review Committee. We're going to hear from Mayor Pro Tem Boyette.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At the Technical Review Committee meeting, there was a discussion of a project in Wendell Falls, or adjacent to Wendell Falls, called the Richardson Plot, or something like that. It's a commercial out parcel with 6 individual lots for commercial development. There was discussion about road access and stormwater drainage. There were some questions about those things, and perhaps get some answers at the next CRC. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, we'll have our commissioners' reports now, and we'll start down at the end with Commissioner Joyner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to touch on a couple quick things. One, I and I know other commissioners have received phone calls and inquiries on. We've talked about, I think, all the other issues tonight, but solid waste, leaf and limb. I'm going to highlight part of that conversation that I've had, also asking staff to help provide guidance broadly so that we can, it is now the fall season. Things are beginning to fall out of your trees. If you're like me, rather large sticks that might not fit in that little brown can are beginning to fall. So one, know that we're aware of it, we see it, we know it, and there's a plan. Two, as fall increases, so will leaves, and so the problem is about to increase. We're also aware of that. There's a lot of reasons why that is a good program. I'd ask staff to help us highlight those reasons, as well as identifying the problem spots for us. The other piece that, through my conversations, I often realize that folks are not aware of this resource. If you ask Public Works, I don't know that I've ever called Brian Bray's cell phone, but I've talked to him a lot, because if you download the app from the App Store, tell Wendell, that is how historically I have been able to use and identify things that do not look right to me. It is also a good way of identifying problems like this, and I am certain that if that is not a method that it's a good way to track data on the front end. It's also a good way for us to recognize hotspots and parts of the program. That said, I understand that our talented staff is already working on things on this, so I did want to say that. We certainly recognize it. Lots of things going on in the community in lots of new ways. Mr. Bergerman talked about Wendell Baptist earlier. For anyone that wants a drive-in experience, we're now doing drive-in church out at just past the golf course on the Wendell Methodist property. It's certainly a socially distanced, safe experience. My daughter likes to call it church in the car. There's a ton going on in town, and I do not believe that it is in the best interest of time or my memory to try to recount the rest of them, and I am hoping that the rest of the board picks me up as we go.
Commissioner Deloach.
Thank you, Mayor. Received confirmation that the treat trail is now a go, so that's exciting news. Friday, October 30th, not February. We're not pushing it out that far. So good news. Obviously, it's going to look quite a bit different this year, but keep your eye on the town website for information about that. There will be a flu shot clinic at the farmhouse in Wendell Falls this coming Thursday from 4 o'clock until 7 p.m. This event is open to the public. Most insurance providers will be accepted, and they will have a self-pay option as well. So $29 for that. if you're doing the self-pay. And yes, it is a drive-through. You do have that option. So you will need an ID, and thank you to Advanced Care Family Practice for setting that up. And finally, I just want to emphasize, you can tell in our discussions tonight that we, meaning town staff and the town board, we want to be good partners if possible. And that's with our business owners and town citizens throughout town. So if you have input, I preach it a lot, if you have input, ideas, concerns, please, by all means, reach out. Thank you.
Commissioner Lutz?
I have no comments for tonight.
Commissioner Tarnaski?
Good evening, Mayor. I'd like to make a comment and thank all the Wendell residents that came out for the annual St. Eugene Food Festival this past Saturday, and it was a drive-through food festival this year, of course, and just thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Boyette?
No comments tonight, Mayor.
Real quickly, echoing the leaf and limb, I've been getting some calls about that as well. I guess it's the time of year. I've had a couple of people that didn't realize that they had the 2 times a year pickup. I had some tell me, a man today, that the can just showed up in his yard and he didn't know what it was for and it didn't have the paper in it. Apparently he didn't receive the card in the mail or possibly overlooked it. I don't know, but I'm thinking that it's a good time for us to revisit it and maybe get some information out and maybe even remind people how we got to where we are and why we chose it. You can do that in a few words, and let's try to get that out to people because I think we need to. I want to remind you that this Saturday is the last farmers market of the season. If you haven't been yet, go check it out. Also, another thing I'd like us to take a look at is I've been getting a lot of questions about the events in town from now through the end of the year, the Treat Trail, the Wendell Wonderland, and various things. And what I want everybody to know is that the situation is a bit fluid, and we're trying to adjust as adjustments are made and as we keep an eye on our COVID numbers and on the governor's orders that are going on at that time. So things are kind of fluid. We're likely hesitant to say this is what's going to happen at this time beyond the Treat Trail because we're trying to be as flexible as we can and do as much as we can safely, but we don't know what it's going to be like in December. So I would urge you to just keep an eye on the Town of Wendell social media account, and you can find it there, and various of us share that as well. And you'll know once we know. Once we know, we'll get it out there. The last thing that I wanted to mention is I haven't done this yet. I wanted to take a minute to thank the staff and the employees from the town of Wendell. I have seen over since February when this started, the pandemic started, I have seen people rise to the occasion and exceed my expectations in more ways than I could recount to you tonight. We might break our 9 o'clock time frame, so I don't want to go on and on and on, but there have been so many people have different employees. They've been very eager to modify what they're doing. They've been very eager to go above and beyond. They've been very eager to get the kids in the parks, to get the programming started, to take care of our streets and roads, to take care of your leaves and limbs, to take care of your permitting needs, to take care of your administrative needs. I just can't say enough, and I really want to thank you all. And I literally could go down the list and name every single one. I've seen every single one of them on one occasion or another go above and beyond, and I haven't seen anybody do it without a smile, and I just really, really thank you. And that's one of the things that makes Wendell a wonderful place to live. That's why we're all here, and we're doing great, even though this is a trying time. I want everybody to just take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. We're going to be all right. Okay, I think that's the last. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.